Have you ever had a crimp pull or over crimped and broke the line? Well, we're going to break down today the crimps to the line ratio and where it goes in the crimping tool. Angelo Di Paola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty. I'm here at J&M Tackle, the Gulf Coast's foremost saltwater outfitter, and we're here with Carson Hall, and Carson is going to break it down for us. Carson, show us what we need to know when it comes to crimps.
First thing is there's several different kinds. You have what's called a double copper crimp, and this is my personal favorite. I really like the double coppers. You also have an aluminum crimp, an oval aluminum, which works really well also, and then you have a nickel plated copper crimp. And all of these kind of have a purpose, and some of it crosses over. Your nickel plated copper crimps, these are for crimping cable when you're building hook sets or building wahoo lures and things like that you want to hold up a long time in salt water. That nickel coating really helps protect that copper and keep it from eroding. Your aluminum crimps, I like these for stuff that you're going to be going through a lot of and really burning up a lot of crimps because they're cheaper than the copper crimps, but they don't hold up as well in the salt water. Something that's been used a lot and sitting around and not meticulously maintained, the corrosion will take effect on it, and they will break over time. The coppers do the best as far as your terminal tackle rigging.
Why is that?
Because of the corrosion in the salt water, the copper is a denser material, and so it takes longer to erode away versus your lighter aluminum material.
Are they a little bit softer? I feel like they crimp better too.
I agree also. And with that shape too, when you crimp, I feel like it has more surface area on the monofilament or fluorocarbon to help it grab better.
All right, so on these different packs, you have 1.2 millimeters, 1.6 millimeters, and it kind of corresponds with the size of line, 60 to 130, 130 to 200, and so on and so forth. What's all this mean?
Your measurements, it's the diameter of the tube that's inside the crimp for what size line. The biggest thing is look at your line that you're using, and it's usually going to give you a diameter of what it is. This is 300-pound high catch. It's 1.8 millimeter. And you want to find something pretty similar in size to what you're using. You don't want it to be too big or too small. So here we have a 1.9, which works great on this 300. And this is about the largest that you want to put into this. If you're using a different brand 300 that's a little thicker, you may want to go ahead and bump up to like a 2.2.
All right. So one thing is on the crimping tool, 2.2, 1.0 to 2.0, and so on. So it's going to give you the what is this? The gap kind of.
It's for what size crimp that's made for, and it's a good rough start. It's not always the exact what you need. But what I like to do is make sure you've got a good sharp cut on your mono or fluorocarbon so there's not a big burr there, so you get it through the correct size crimp. And when it comes through, you want to make sure that there's not a lot of slack or it's not really tight. If it's really tight, you need to go to the next size up so that it can conform around the mono. So once you've gone through, you bring it back, you've got this, put a piece of chafe tube or depending on what you're hooking to, but you pull it down, and then I take a lighter and I mushroom this end. And what that does is it kind of flares out, and when you go to cinch this down around your chafe tube or hook, it's not going to pull back through the crimp. So you can just get it to whatever size you need, and you don't have to worry about it. It's also one extra insurance to help it keep from sliding through the crimp if it's not crimp tight enough.
All right, so we have some 300-pound Momoy. You have a 1.9 millimeter, and we have the hand crimp tool.
And this one says 1.0 to 2.0 in this third jaw down. And on this 300, that fits really good. You see how it's a nice tight fit, the way the curve meets around the crimp. And when you do this, you don't want to go all the way out here to the edge. You want to leave a little bit to flare. So you start there with a little bit, and you crimp it down. And you want to make sure you get this good and tight. Sometimes it takes two hands to really squeeze it down. And then I move it down to the next section, and I'm going to do the same thing.
Leaving a little bit to flare, right?
And then on this crimp, you can really do it 3 times. And now There's a little bit there. I'll usually split that gap, but just making sure that I leave a little bit there to flare out and crimp it down. And once you've done that, you can see how this has a little bit of deflection coming out. It's not just straight, it's being squeezed tight. And what that is that lets you know that this is making a good bond, or not really a bond, but it's squeezed tight enough that it's not going to slip. If you don't see any deflection here, you may need to bump up to the next jowl and the crimper, and just, you may not go all the way, just tightly, just snug it up a little bit.
Don't be the dude that has the crimp pull on the winning fish.
You don't want that. And a lot of times what I do, especially on like my hook end, I'll go ahead and cleat it off or put it on something and take a wrap and pull and make sure that crimp's good and tight. The one up at your snap swivel, that one sees just your rod tip pressure, pounds of drag. Not that big of a deal like a fish you're going to wrap up on a marlin or something like that.
All right, so question is, this has the millimeters. This is 1/32. What do you do here when,
some of them, don't have measurements on them at all. And just the biggest thing is making sure that the crimp fits in there and it's not too small. Because if it's too small, I'll even do one just to show you what it's going to look like. It's going to tear the crimp, and it's not going to do it. It's going to pull loose. We'll take 200 pounds here. Run it through. I'm not going to melt it here just to show you quickly. But ideally, this is a 1.6 millimeters. So the 1.0 is a little small for it, and that's a little big. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll start here and snug it or get it tight, but that's not a good enough crimp in my opinion to fish with. So I'll bump it up to the next one and just snug it up. But if you get it too tight, you'll see where this comes in, and you may not be able to see it here, but you'll actually get cracking and tearing in that. And when that happens, you've now lost your compression, and it's going to pull loose, and it creates a sharp burr.
Yeah, and you can kind of see it kind of flares out a little bit too much there too.
Right.
So what's a bad? Get it tight here, so you can see what a bad crimp looks like. Because we've seen it what a good crimp looks like, but I want to know what not to do.
Right. You see these ones where they're really flared out real bad like that. That's too much.
And that's going to break or pull through.
Right.
Guys, thank you for watching. As always, keep your trash out the splash. Leave some for the grandkids, and we'll catch you next week.